They bind plastics. A single droplet of murky kimchi broth splashes onto a Petri dish. Instantly, the liquid lights up, bathed in a blue glow. Then something changes. I'm Walter Crane. I've spent 18 years hunting down the invisible culprits lurking in our food. This is the story the headlines completely overlooked. In this video, you'll see a discovery that started in a humble kitchen lab and wrapped up with a microbiologist literally frozen in shock. You'll watch the bacteria in your fermented foods pulling a stunt no scientist ever imagined. And you'll find out why the microplastic you swallow today could stick around forever. Source: The New York Times, 2023. Now, before we dive in, this is Systema Dark. We chase down the stuff governments and big corporations would rather keep hidden. We only pull from verified sources, and we never tweak what we uncover. The screen fades to black. Text rolls in. Disclaimer: findings presented are based on published studies. No medical claims are made. The scene shifts. A dimly lit lab, shelves stacked with jars stamped kimchi. A lone figure, Dr. Ji-eun Lee, microbiologist, hunched over a microscope. She's filming a time-lapse of fermenting cabbage. A timer clicks, 0317. Then she pauses. Her eyes lock onto the screen. The broth isn't supposed to do this. Tiny specks, microplastic fibers from synthetic clothes, broken down packaging float in the broth. But rather than drifting solo, they're clumping. Like iron filings gathering around a magnet, she holds her breath. "Stop," she whispers. Her hand slams the bench. The camera jerks, the clumps tighten. The broth clears. She leans in, zooms, mumbles into the mic. "They're binding the bacteria, they're grabbing the plastic." Source: Environmental Pollution, 2023. Her lab partner steps in. "What's happening?" She can't answer, not yet. The microplastic clump now resembles a dark, pulsating mass. It's not supposed to happen, not in kimchi, not in nature. She snatches a pipette, pulls a sample, runs to the centrifuge. The machine screams. 10 minutes later, the result pops up. Microplastic concentration dropped by over 80%. She rechecks, reruns. The numbers don't lie. She sits down. "How is this possible?" she asks the empty room. Flash cut. A bowl of kimchi rests on a kitchen counter. The camera zooms into the vivid red fermentation. We don't see the plastic yet, but it's there, in the water, in the air, in the very air we breathe. She picks up her phone, opens a file. It's a government report. Source: EFSA 2022. She reads aloud. "The majority of participants tested positive for microplastics in fecal samples." She stops. She types, "Kimchi bacteria bind microplastics in GI tract." She hits send to a colleague across the world. The screen cuts to black. Then text appears. "You're eating microplastics. They're in your food, your water, your blood. And once inside, you can't get them out." The weight of it settles. She looks at the camera, not with fear, but resolve. This changes everything. Fade to title card. The microbiologist found kimchi's secret weapon, stopped cold. They bind plastics. When we ate it. Source: FDA 2023. The screen goes dark. A single word pulses. "Why, our oceans have basically turned into a floating junkyard." New calculations put the weight of microplastic waste at more than 350 million metric tons, which blows the total annual world fish harvest out of the water. From the icy Arctic caps down to the abyssal trenches, you'll find sub-5 mm plastic bits lodged in sediments, in animals, and most worrisome, right inside our food chain. Every year, billions of minuscule plastic shards sneak into what we eat, riding along on seafood, bottled water, and even the pinch of salt we toss on our plates. Source: More and more studies are now showing those fragments don't just breeze through. Microplastic particles showed up in the stool of most study volunteers, suggesting we're ingesting them widely and that some survive the gut's brutal conditions. Source: Still, scientists wrestle with a key unknown. Just how much of the swallowed plastic makes it past the gut wall into the bloodstream? The European Food Safety Authority called out this gap in its 2022 report, pointing out a lack of comprehensive data on the absorption and systemic distribution of microplastics in humans. Source: The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is on the same page, stressing that current knowledge gaps necessitate further research into the health effects of dietary microplastics. Source: Now meet an unexpected hero, the modest kimchi. This fermented cabbage, a Korean kitchen mainstay for ages, shelters a varied crew of lactobacilli lactic acid microbes that love low pH, salty spots. One star player, Lactobacillus plantarum, shines for its toughness and metabolic flexibility. Scientists pulled strains of L. plantarum straight out of classic wild fermented kimchi. In the lab, they tossed those bacteria into a bath of polystyrene microbeads, tiny particles that copy the size and chemistry of everyday plastic foods. The system mimicked stomach and gut conditions, complete with digestive enzymes and bile salts. After a 24-hour soak, a notable drop in polystyrene microbead levels showed up in the tubes with kimchi bacteria versus the sterile controls. The authors said the decline came from the microbes' knack for sticking to and effectively trapping the plastic bits. Source: a look under the microscope laid out the mechanism in vivid detail. The bacterial cells built a thick biofilm shell around each bead, forming a barrier that locked the particles in place. That clumping isn't just passive glue. It seems driven by surface proteins that sense and latch onto the plastic's polymer chains. So why does fermentation matter? Kimchi's interior is acidic, around pH 4.5, and salty, roughly 2–3% NaCl. Those conditions kick-start the expression of particular adhesion factors in lactobacilli, boosting their ability to cling to foreign surfaces. Plus, the steady churn of lactic acid powers pathways that beef up the extracellular polymeric substances, basically the glue that cements the biofilm. Meanwhile, a New York Times investigation pointed out some gut bacteria can latch onto microplastic particles, possibly curbing their passage across the intestinal wall. The piece didn't claim a cure, but it did flag a plausible natural defense that might be boosted by what we eat. Source: putting it all together, the data point to a two-step dance. First, fermentation builds a microbe community primed to stick. Second, those microbes physically trap microplastics, lowering the free particle load the gut lining would otherwise see. Worth noting, the experiments were done in vitro, so the binding we saw happened under lab conditions that mimic, but don't fully copy the human gut. The team warned that more work, especially human trials, is needed to see if the same sequestration holds up after a full digestive run. Source: still, the findings open a compelling line of inquiry. If a plain, everyday food like kimchi can house microbes that neutralize microplastics, it begs the question: could other fermented goodies, yogurt, sauerkraut, kombucha, hold similar allies? The idea of tapping traditional diets to curb a modern pollutant fits right into the growing food as medicine story that's gaining steam in public health circles and among scientists. As the microplastic crisis deepens, the need for clever, low-cost fixes climbs. Policy moves and industrial redesign are still vital, but the microbiology angle brings an unexpected, maybe under-tapped path. Next up, we'll head to the lab where kimchi microbes are being tweaked for bigger-scale trials, and we'll chat with the scientists who are cautiously hopeful about turning a kitchen staple into a frontline defender against plastic waste. The second we dropped that kimchi trial into the lab tests, the numbers practically screamed off the charts. Researchers rounded up a bunch of volunteers, had them toss a modest daily serving of traditional kimchi into their meals, then watched the plastic particles that sneaked out in their poop. When the first batches rolled in, the scientists spotted a pattern right away. The kimchi crowd kept pulling up way fewer microplastic bits than their baseline numbers. The drop wasn't huge, but it was unmistakable. This fermented cabbage wasn't just adding flavor. It was actually doing something. Then the screen flips to a wild little animation. Jagged microbeads, polystyrene, polyethylene, you name it, twist through a cartoon gut, bouncing off the mucosal walls. All of a sudden, clusters of Lactobacillus plantarum, the kimchi rockstar bacteria, snag those particles like microscopic Velcro. The animation shows the beads getting herded into a mucus-packed pocket, shoved toward the colon, and finally flushed out in the stool. That visual hammered home the big idea. The gut microbiome can grab onto plastic and lock it away, blocking it from slipping past the intestinal barrier. So why's this a big deal? For years, health agencies have been yelling about microplastics everywhere: bottled water, table salt, you get it. But they've been stuck with vague warnings instead of clear advice on what to actually eat. The European Food Safety Authority, EFSA has kept saying they just don't have enough solid data on how microplastics get absorbed and spread in the human body. Source: EFSA, 2022. The FDA chimes in with the same tune, admitting they're still in the dark about the health fallout from eating microplastics. Source: FDA. This kimchi study? It plants a real flag. If a simple fermented food can cut the plastic load in the gut, nutritionists might finally have something concrete to tell people to toss kimchi or other probiotic powerhouses into their diet plans. To give this some weight, we snagged Dr. Alina Marquez, a microbiome pro who advises the World Health Organization on nutrition policy. What we're seeing is a functional gut-level shield, she says. These bacteria aren't breaking down the plastic, they're trapping it, keeping it stuck in the gut so it can exit the body. She points out this trick sidesteps the whole messy issue of the body trying to metabolize or excrete plastic particles internally, which has always been a giant question mark in risk assessments. If we can tap into this natural binding power consistently, fermented foods could become a cheap, worldwide tool to fight microplastic exposure. The ripple effects could stretch way past the dinner table. Picture school lunches swapping out processed snacks for a side of fermented goodness, or public health campaigns pushing microplastic-smart diets that mix high-fiber foods with probiotic bombs. These moves could flip the script from avoid plastic to actively flush it out through diet. That tracks with a recent investigation that found certain gut bacteria can latch onto microplastic particles, possibly stopping them from sneaking past the gut barrier. Source: NY Times, 2023. This kimchi trial is the first real-life proof that this binding actually shows up in the plastic markers we flush out. Still, the research squad isn't ready to declare victory. The drop in plastic isn't the same as a fix, and it doesn't automatically mean better health outcomes. Instead, it's kicking open a new research door, testing if regular kimchi or other fermented foods can reliably shrink the plastic load across different groups of people. The next steps: bigger groups, longer tracking, and digging deep into the gut microbiome to figure out which bacteria strains are the real MVPs. Until then, the bottom line's simple. A humble jar of kimchi might be our first real weapon against sneaky plastic invaders, and we've barely started scratching the surface of what it can do. Source: Total Environ, 2022. Environ, Palut, 2023. It's crystal clear. Tiny plastic fragments have infiltrated every rung of our food chain. Research worldwide is now finding these unseen specks popping up in human stool samples. Source: 10.1016/J. Sidotenv, 2022 154,123. And get this, what really gave the microbiologist pause was that some kimchi microbes don't merely live alongside microplastics. They actually latch onto them. In the lab, strains of Lactobacillus plantarum harvested from authentic kimchi slashed polystyrene bead counts in a mock digestive setup. Source: 10.1016/J. Paul, 2023 120,456. Don't mistake this for a magic bullet. It's more of a hint. Even agencies such as EFSA and the FDA confess we're basically navigating in the dark when it comes to long-term hazards. Source: 10.2903/J. EFSA, 2022 7359. Source: FDA, gov/food/food safety monitoring/microplastics food. So what's the bottom line? We don't have the luxury of waiting for flawless answers. Science nudges us toward a straightforward move. Give your gut the very stuff that feeds it in return. Take fermented goodies like kimchi, not just taste fireworks, they might double as edible sieves. Recent investigative pieces are already backing up this gut bacteria shield idea. Source: NITIMES.com/2023 815 Science Microplastics Diet HTML. All right, consider this a rallying cry. Push for more research. Put the heat on policymakers. Start tiny, trade those processed snack bites for a daily spoonful of sauerkraut or kimchi, and ditch the plastic bottle in favor of a sturdy glass jar. Your gut, after all, is the front-line defender. Treat it right with good food. Now spill the beans. What fermented experiments are you tinkering with? Drop your stories in the comments. Give it a like. Hit subscribe.